Hello, hello. Welcome back.
Hello, good to see you.
Great to see you too. I missed you.
I know it's been
When
so
we,
long.
yeah, so long. When we don't do these on a regular cadence, I'm like, all right, I need my updates. I need to know what's going on. The little check ins and team messages with you are just not quite enough. So,
Right.
welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Living Richly with Curo, episode number 39. My name is Anne McCabe. I am the CEO and a partner here at Curo with my lovely partner, Atricia.
Hi, I'm Atricia Roberts, COO and partner at Curo. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Today's topic is going to be a fun one. I feel like we say that every week, but truly, this will be a fun one. We are going to talk about money personalities and the six most common money personalities that we see as financial planners and financial advisors every day. And we're going to talk about the pitfalls of the personalities, as well as some tips if you find yourself in one of these personalities, because each have some pros and some cons. So we want to talk about how to deal with them. But before we get into that, let's do an A team catch up. And Atricia, you're definitely starting first this week. You have a lot to catch us up on, Miss Paris.
Paris. So I recently had a trip to Paris. It was fantastic. My first trip there. I've been in Europe before, but never to Paris. I actually tagged along on the end of my sister's business trip. So my sister had a business trip. So I was like, oh, I'll come join you for the last few days of the trip. But it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Now, was it cold? Yes. Was it overcast? I don't think I got a drop of sun the entire like 4 or 5 days I was there. But I mean, I left the cold. So it wasn't like it was a stark change. But even with the not so ideal weather, it was still a really nice trip. The Eiffel Tower is breathtaking. And I've had people who have tried to minimize it for me, like, oh, the Eiffel Tower, oh, it's okay. It's an amazing thing to see, especially when it lights up and it like sparkles at the top of every hour. It was really incredible to see it in person. So that was definitely one of the highlights. But of course, we did some museums. We actually did two museums. We were there during what's called Solds. So it's one of the two times in the year when things go on sale. And that includes high end designer brands as well. So, did probably a little too much shopping. So, I'm on a spending hiatus for the foreseeable future. And then, of course, one of the real highlights was being able to see one of our former colleagues who actually retired to Paris last year, which is just an incredible thing even to say, like retired and moved to Paris. But I got to catch up and spend a good part of a day with her, just walking around her neighborhood and having lunch and, shopping and eating desserts. And it was just so good to see her again and spend some time with her. So overall, a success. 10 out of 10 would recommend. My next trip to Paris would definitely though be in the spring. I'm sure it's incredible in springtime. So
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And shout out
yeah.
to our sweet Jay.
Hey Jay.
Jay, we love you. We miss you, Jay. Our sweet Julianne. Yeah, so awesome that you got to see her in her new element
I
and
know.
how amazing that she gets to retire to Paris. So we're so
Yeah.
so happy for her, but miss her. So I'm glad y'all got to hang out.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun. I'm glad she made time for me.
Yeah. Well, not surprising. She was so
Yeah.
excited to be able to see you. So
Yeah.
awesome, awesome.
Alrighty. What's new in your world?
Well, don't be jealous, but I too traveled to Kansas City.
Yeah.
No Eiffel Towers, no luxury shopping. But I had a great time. It was a super fun trip. I had never been to Kansas City. I literally got to my hotel, stayed, and then went back to the airport. So I cannot tell you anything about Kansas City. It was very cold, but I went to speak to a group of advisors. There are about 120 folks at this conference, and it was just so fun. I love talking
Oh,
about our business. I love meeting other advisors. There was a nice range of some advisors who were just starting out, so it like brought me back to the days when I was hustling and just trying to make it all work. And so having some conversations with, the younger advisors, just to let them know that like all the struggles are normal and worth it. And they just got to keep trucking and it will get easier. So that was awesome. Just an awesome group of advisors, great questions, really engaged. I actually was on my feet for 4 hours. We did a
Ooh.
workshop for part of that, but it was, yeah, I was like solid on my feet for 4 hours.
Yeah, and if I know you, you were in heels. They were probably a
Yes,
quarter inch too high.
I was in heels. I was in heels. Okay, but check this out. Have you seen this new brand? They're by Sarah Blakely, who is the creator of Spanx. She has
Mhm.
created a new shoe called the Sneak. They're called Sneaks. They're
Okay.
a combination of sneakers and a high heel. And when I first saw them, I was like, those are ugly. Do not like them. But I actually thought about this, speaking, and I was like, I'm going to
Mhm.
be on my feet for 4 hours. I like wearing heels. Let me just give them a shot. And I tell you,
Okay.
they were so comfortable. I could have run a marathon in them. Well, I can't run a marathon anyway, but
Right.
if I could, I
But if
could have
you
run
could.
I could have run a marathon in these shoes. So, I highly recommend them. They're interesting looking because they look like sneakers with the heel on them. But so
Right.
many people came up to me and they were like, "Are those custom shoes?" I was like, "No, they're not custom." And a bunch of men came up and they were like, I know this sounds weird, but can I take a picture of your shoes so I can show my wife?" And I was like, "Normally I would say no, but I'm gonna let this
Right.
one slide." So,
I have to check those out.
yeah, they're interesting. Again, when I first saw them come out, I was like, "Ew." But when I was thinking about this particular
Yes.
situation, they were actually perfect. So, it
Good.
was really fun. And, when I think
Good.
about yeah, I think about the impact, I love working one-on-one with clients, but I was talking to 120 advisors who each probably have, hundreds of clients themselves. So just like
Mhm.
the exponential potential impact was really exciting to me. So, it was a lot of fun.
That's great, and I know that you were fantastic and represented us so well. I'm so proud of you, and I'm glad you had a
Mhm.
good time doing it.
Thank you. I
Of
appreciate that.
course.
Yeah. Hopefully I repped Curo
Yeah, I know you
properly.
did. No questions.
It was super fun. So, all right. Well, let's get into
Mm.
our topic du jour. What is your money personality? So, whether you are a saver or you are a spender or some of the other personalities we are going to talk about is less important, like the category is less important as much as it is about understanding yourself and putting some systems and guardrails in place to make sure that you minimize the negatives of your money personality and maximize the positives of your money personality. And really, if you know yourself, this can transform your relationship with money. So, we like to talk about, communication styles, or if you are familiar with love languages, just like it's important for you to be aware of your communication style and your love language in a relationship, we are all in a relationship with money as well every day, right? Like money impacts everything we do pretty much on a daily basis. So, understanding our relationship with money and our personality with money can really just help us make the smartest decisions that we possibly can.
Yes, and, I always say that awareness, right, being aware, even if things are bad, right, even if you are aware of shortcomings, it means that they can be top of mind and they can be, changed. Behaviors can be changed. So I think the awareness of the behavior, even if you attribute it to a bad behavior, can always be repaired. You just have to, acknowledge what that personality type is and the best way to avoid the pitfalls.
Yeah, exactly. And this is not about making you somebody different from who you are, right? It is,
Right.
to your point, about being aware, cognizant of it, and then putting some systems in place to make sure that you are making the smartest financial decisions. Okay, so as promised, we are going to go through the 6 most common money personalities. There are a couple others, but we decided to pare it down for sake of time and also for sake of the fact that these are the most common ones that Atricia and I see every day working with clients. So we thought these would be the most impactful to talk about. So as we were talking about these personalities, think and listen to what may resonate with you. We are going to share some questions at the end of the episode that you can ask yourself, but likely you will hear some words or some things that really resonate with you, and that is a key that is likely your money personality. But it is important to remember that not everybody has to fit solid in one box. You can have aspects of multiple money personalities. We just tend to see that there is a predominant personality and then more of like a secondary personality. So, all right, Atrisa, so why don't you kick us off with the first one?
Yep. So our first personality is the saver. So this person is cautious with their money. They prioritize saving for the future. You may find joy in watching the savings balances grow. You're that person who wants to check it every day to see how much interest you've earned, to see what additions have been made. And as planners and advisors, we like savers. Of course, we like people who want to save money and who think about the future of their money. There are some pitfalls to this personality, though, in that many savers struggle to ever spend the money they save. So, because you find so much joy in seeing the balances grow, you tend to not want to spend things, even the things that bring you joy or the things that make you happy, for sake of, not saving as much or not having the savings balances be as big. So, in these types of personalities, sometimes they can miss out on activities or experiences for fear of spending money. You may also miss out on investment returns, right? Rate of returns, because rather than being an investor, you want to save and see, the cash balances in your savings account build up. So, in order to avoid some of these pitfalls, one of the tips is to create a separate fun fund. So, FUND, a fun fund account, so that one, you're still saving, but it's earmarked for saving that can be guilt free, right? You're saving for the things that make you happy, that spark joy. And this will help you keep your budget balanced, right? And you're still saving, but also helping you enjoy the money that you've worked really hard to earn and that you've done a great job of saving.
So Xander and I literally yesterday met with
Mm-hmm.
prospective clients, and they are self-proclaimed savers. They said we've done a great job of saving. The husband just recently sold a business, which is what prompted them to reach out to us. And they
Mm-hmm.
got the entire amount that he earned from the business sale sitting in cash.
Okay, fun.
And he literally said, "We do not know how to spend our money. Like, we have
Mm,
been so focused on saving for so long, we do not know how to spend our money. Like, when a dollar comes in, it automatically goes into the savings account." So these are, it probably sounds like "Oh, poor baby. Like, what a bad problem." But it truly, if you think about having a holistic and joyful life, it is important that you learn how to spend your money responsibly, but also on things that do bring you joy. So we literally just had this conversation with real folks yesterday.
right. And I mean, one of the first things we do in our planning process is to have clients identify goals, visions, things they like, consider hobbies, what things do you enjoy? Because even if you're a saver, I think many of them can come around to learning how to spend on the things that truly bring them happiness. So being mindful and cognizant of what those things are can be helpful for the saver.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when the planning process becomes so beneficial because we can
Yes.
show folks you can spend X amount of dollars on travel or a hobby or buying a new car or whatever it is, and your financial plan is still secure. So having
Yes.
that awareness and that confirmation that it is okay to spend that money and you will still be in a great position, I think is really
Hmm.
helpful. Okay, number two, flip side of that coin, the spender. So, if you are a spender personality, you get extreme joy from treating yourself, treating others. So, if you are, the first one in line, I was going to ask you at the end to admit, but you called yourself out. You called yourself out at the beginning. So if you are now, this is not you, Atrisa. I know this. You are the first one in line for the new iPhone. This is not Atrisa. She is not spending her money on new iPhones. I can attest. I'm like, you got to buy a new iPhone. But if you are the first one, in line for the new gadget, or you just decide spontaneously to take a trip that, that wasn't otherwise planned, or a shopping spree, this may be you, especially if you are buying things that you do not necessarily need. Chances are you have a spending personality. So the pitfalls are probably obvious. If you are spending everything you earn and hopefully not more than you earn, but we do see this sometimes where people go into debt for spending, then you are obviously not saving for your future and setting your future goals up for success. Also, you're probably not saving for a rainy day. And so when that emergency occurs, you will inevitably have to put that on some sort of high interest debt like a credit card. So those pitfalls are probably pretty obvious. So here is our tip if you are in this category. Create a budget, and that probably sounds like a four-letter word to you if you're in this category, but create a budget, but make sure that your budget allows for some discretionary fun spending. So we are not saying that you can't spend money, but it is important to come up with a spending plan, a budget, and allocate a certain amount of money every month to fun. When you have spent that pot of fun money for the month, no mess. You're cut off. No more spending until the next month. And if you struggle with this, I know a lot of people, especially with like social media and ads and things, are impulse buyers. So one of the things that we would recommend if you find yourself, scrolling through social media at night and you see this ad and you're like, "Ooh, I need that new thing or I want that new thing." Make a note on your phone of all the things that you want to buy that are these sort of impulse purchases, and then just take a moment, right? Like come back to them a week or a month later, see if you still want them, see if you feel like you still need them. This puts a little bit of a pause in between the impulse desire to buy something and the actual purchase. And that can be really helpful just to take a little bit of a step back and really ask yourself, do I need this? Or if I spend this money on this particular thing, am I robbing myself my future goals like retirement or education for my family?
Yes. So now I am admittedly, self admittedly, a spender. For me, though, it's typically around experiences more than they are actual things. I don't necessarily like to accumulate a lot of stuff. Like, I will hold on to a cell phone for years until it just does not work anymore. Because in my mind, it's like, why do I need another cell phone? Like, this one still makes phone calls. But dining experiences, I'm the person, I don't mind picking up the tab for the table, right? Or going on a trip. Oh, last minute idea. Let's just go to Puerto Rico for the weekend. Okay, sure. Let's book the flight. So usually my spending is more around experiences than they are things. But one of the things that has worked for me and helped me, and it's about budgeting my discretionary, but it's also about budgeting my savings. So in my itemized expense sheet in my budget, I know what I need to be saving every month, and specifically outside of my retirement, right? 401ks just kind of happen. But outside of my retirement, I know how much an additional saving I would like to do. So I set that on an automated investment plan. So that way I don't even think about it. I don't even have to tempt myself with the extra money that's there. It's just going to automatically transfer. It's out of sight, out of mind. And that way I know that what's there that's left, I can use for the fun experiences. So yeah. But I also realized too that it's kind of tied to my love language. So my two
Mm.
top ranked love languages are acts of service, but they're also gifts. I enjoy giving gifts as much as I enjoy receiving them. I love buying things for people. Like I love going to a place. I think I just told you, like, oh my God, I bought
Yeah,
you something from Paris and I can't wait to give it to
exactly. Yep. We just had that conversation yesterday. I can't wait to receive it, by the way.
you. So again, those things are tied for me, but by being able to also automate my savings, it makes sure that I'm not overspending my budget or I'm not depleting my future savings and risking my retirement because I wanted to eat out 3 times that week.
Yeah, it's called paying yourself first.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's what works for me. And then sometimes there are months when there's more extra and I don't have anything to spend it on. So I just chuck more into the savings. But as long as I know that that automated amount is going every time, then I feel better about the spending that I do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Love that.
Alrighty, so our next money personality type is the investor. Now, I have a friend, we will call her Allison. Allison is the prototype of this personality. So, investors are obsessed with growing your money through smart investments, and you're not afraid to take risk for the potential to increase your assets. My friend Allison, every time I turn around, there's a new duplex we should buy. I found this duplex in Baltimore. Let's go buy this duplex and rent it. I've got this great business idea. I think we could make so much money. She is obsessed about investing in different assets, which is a great thing. I think that is fantastic that she's always willing to take the risk because, of course, I'm like, we don't know anything about the Baltimore real estate market. Why would we do that? But the pitfalls to that is that if you invest everything and you don't keep liquidity, right, in your assets, you don't have money in savings, then you run the risk of having to sell off things you need, sometimes at a discount, to create the liquidity you need for the things that come up unexpectedly. You don't want to have all of your assets tied up in real estate because then some emergency happens and now you may have to sell a property in a less than ideal market in order to meet the need of that emergency. So, pro tip, diversify. And we love that word as financial advisors, but you want to diversify not only your investments, right? So, not only the stocks and bonds, but you also want to diversify the pots of money that you have. So, you want to think of things as short term savings and investing and things that are longer term savings and investing. So again, love the investors. They've always got the big ideas, always have the next thing that's going to make us rich, right? Oh, we're going to make so much money when we do this. And I love that about Allison. But my biggest concern with her is always you can't take everything you've saved and buy duplexes in Baltimore, right? What if you have a medical emergency and now you have no cash? So yeah, and
Yeah.
when I first read and kind of thought through this personality type, I'm like, oh, I know this person.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You're like, how quickly can you offload a duplex in Baltimore if you needed the cash? Probably
It's
not
just
overnight.
it's just so random. She does not live in Baltimore. She lives in the DC metro area. So the fact that that was the first thing that came to mind was a duplex in Baltimore. I'm like, girl, why?
Why
We don't know
Baltimore?
what we're doing. Why would we do
That is so funny.
that? Yeah.
All right. Well, personality number 4 is the
Mm-hmm.
avoider. So,
Mm-hmm.
you, if you are an avoider, tend to steer clear of any financial decisions or even discussions. You don't even want to have the conversations about money and about finances because maybe it feels too overwhelming for you. Maybe you just don't know where to start. But the pitfalls of this personality are if you avoid discussing finances and making decisions now, it can lead, number one, to missed opportunities currently, but also massive and much more amount of financial stress down the road when you may have to make a financial decision quickly because you haven't, been
Mm-hmm.
dealing with it all along, and perhaps with not all of the information, which is not ideal, right? We want as much information as we can possibly gather when we need to make a financial decision. So, our tip, if you fall in this personality, is to start small. So, don't set a goal that's just going to perpetuate that feeling of being overwhelmed. Start with something that is bite sized that you can commit to. So, perhaps it is setting up a budget or just checking your credit score, right? Something very doable, easy, not a lot of friction, and something that you can really commit to. Because if you do this, you set this goal and then you achieve it, that will start to build momentum. And you will probably realize that it's not as scary as you originally thought. And then you can build on that momentum and continue to set financial goals and knock those out.
Yeah, there's an old saying, I'm sure everybody's heard, that a fool and his money are soon parted. And I think that many times we accredit that to people who spend foolishly. But I also think of it in the case of the avoider, the people who just don't pay attention, don't want to know, just that sort of foolish ignorance, right, around money. Just ignore, avoid, it'll be fine. I think it's a very dangerous game to play to not have money conversations. And we have the clients who are super obsessed, and they can be difficult as well. But the avoider is a hard money personality type. You got to be willing. We talked about at the beginning of the episode, the awareness. You got to be willing to talk about it, to know what's going on. So taking those small steps to make it not feel like an overwhelming topic is really, really important.
Yeah, and oftentimes in a couple situation, we will notice that one of the spouses is the avoider and the other spouse tends to be like more dominating in the conversation, has the personalities, is expressing, background and expressing their goals and whatnot. And so we really do try to make a point, especially if one of the spouses in the couple is quieter, not answering the questions, not really talking. We make it a point to make sure that they have a chance to chime in. And oftentimes they'll say things like, oh, well, money's not my thing, or I don't know about investing, or I just let him or her handle it. I don't really deal with it. And we try gently and empathetically to let them know that, especially if that happens to be the female in the relationship, which not always, but oftentimes it is, that it's really important that you know about your financial position. And it's fine if you want your spouse to manage the bills or manage the budget or whatnot, but you need to be in tune, because what happens if your spouse passes away and now all of a sudden you are fully responsible? And we see that, statistically speaking, that will happen to the majority of women because we tend to live longer. So we really do try to coach these kinds of clients who are avoiders that it doesn't have to be scary, and we're there to support them as well as an advisor, as a coach, but you also have to have some ownership and some awareness of what you have going on.
Yes, it's not a big, bad, scary thing.
No, it's not.
All righty.
Speaking of scary things.
Uh-oh. So our fifth money personality type is the worrier. No matter how much money you have, you constantly are worried that you're going to lose it at any moment. And I think both Anne and I can identify very specific clients who fall into this money personality type. You obsess over the worst case scenario of what will happen if you run out of money. Now, I will note that I have found this to be especially prevalent among clients who did not come from money. So if they grew up in poverty or know what it's like to go without or to not have, even if their life is very different now, right? Even if they're high income earners and they have great savings, there's always this little voice in the back of their head that tells them it could be gone at any time. The pitfalls, I think, can be a little bit obvious. So while it's smart to be aware of what could happen if you don't prepare for the future, letting worry and anxiety about money eat away at your happiness in the current moment is never a good thing. Worry of any sort, right, it can never be good for people emotionally, mentally, or even physically. So we want to give you some tips. And one of the tips is to work on understanding where that financial worry comes from. This may actually include some work with a therapist or with an advisor like Anna, myself, and to seek positivity around money conversations. So when you are constantly worrying, that's a behavioral thing. And sometimes you need some behavioral therapy or coaching to help you process and develop a new relationship or a new mentality around money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And that ties in really well to our last personality type that we are going to talk about, which is the indifferent. So, this is you if you either rarely think about money, or in extreme cases, you believe that money is inherently evil or bad, and you just don't care about it. You don't want to deal with it. So the pitfalls are probably obvious. Things can get really ugly if you are not responsible with your finances, or even if you depend on someone else to do this planning for you. So, our tip, if you are in the indifferent category, is I think similarly to what Atricia was talking about with the worrier, you may want to consider getting some therapy to understand, why do you view money as evil? Was there some experience that you had perhaps in childhood that made you
Mhm.
determine that money is bad or evil? And are there ways that you can heal that trauma or that wound to try to move forward, but also just tactically take some action to know things like where your money is going, what your income is coming in, what your expenses are going out, where you stand on debt, just that awareness and, jotting it down in a spreadsheet or on paper so that it is present and real to you is a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. I don't know a ton of indifferent money personalities, but I do know people who sometimes are borderline. I think avoiders and indifference can sometimes blur the lines between one another. But yeah, it can be scary to think that, money is frightening for you, or it feels evil to you, or wanting it or wanting to attain it. So a lot of times, sometimes we just gotta, call a therapist and process the things that are ailing us.
Yeah, do the work.
Right. You gotta do the work.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully as we were going through these descriptions, something resonated with you and you were like, oh yeah, I do that, or oh yeah, I think that way, or I've said those things. And so you probably have a good sense for what money personality you fall into. But if you didn't determine that by what we shared, think about these questions. So when you receive an unexpected amount of money, what is your first instinct? Is your first instinct, like the folks we talked to yesterday, I'm going to save 100% of it? Is your first instinct, ooh, I want to buy something new or I want to go on a trip? Or is your instinct like, oh my gosh, that is so overwhelming. I don't know what to do with it. I'm just going to ignore it. Because depending upon how you answer that question, that could answer what money personality you tend to be. Or how do you feel about setting financial goals? Does that make you feel excited? Does that make you feel anxious or even indifferent? Is it like, no, I don't set money goals because that's not important to me, or that doesn't sound exciting at all? And then lastly, do you regularly check your finances? Are you checking your accounts? Are you checking your spending, your credit rating, or do you tend to avoid those topics? So, again, just as a reminder, there's no right or wrong here. This is just an opportunity to know ourselves better and to grow and adapt. So, we would love to hear from you, especially after this episode. So, if you figured out what your money personality is as a result of us sharing some of the characteristics, please share your thoughts on Instagram and tag us. We are on Instagram, and the handle is at Curo Private Wealth. So let us know what money personality you have. We would love to communicate with you on Instagram. And before we go into our closing thought, just want to remind you to please subscribe wherever you are listening or watching this. We have some really awesome guests coming up over the next couple of months, and we want to make sure that you are aware when those episodes drop, which they do every Friday. So please subscribe so that you are aware and send in your questions. It's a new year. I'm sure you have financial questions. We would love to answer those. So send those in to podcast@curoprivatewealth.com. So with all that housekeeping behind us, let's go to our closing thought of the day.
Yeah, so mine again probably goes back to something I mentioned several times. I'm deep into the book Atomic Habits and figuring out how to improve my habits for the new year. And one of the new lessons of one of the recent chapters I've been reading slash listening to, because it's an audiobook, is about, the idea of habits as a runaway train, right? And how we think about it, it applies a lot to our bad habits where they sort of compound and get away from us and things just get worse and we find ourselves just down a rabbit's hole of really bad habits. But good habits can be, the same way. They can be a runaway train of good habits, and figuring out how to formulate those so that they build on one another and that you get the compound interest of good habits is really, really important. So that's my lesson to myself, and sharing that with others for the week, is how to create that sort of runaway train of good habits in my life and making the good things and the good behaviors so attractive to me that I have no choice but to want to do them and to hopefully see them run away, and I just get better and better every day.
I love that. That makes me think of like a snowball and like
Mm-hmm.
momentum, right? Like the
Yes.
snowball is going to grow and grow and grow as it goes down the hill, but hopefully it's growing and growing with positive habits as
Yes.
opposed to negative. So I love that.
Yes.
My closing thought for the day is, so as you know, Atricia, my word is essential for
Hmm.
2025. And one of our awesome clients and a very regular listener of our podcast, shout out to Mark,
Hi,
wrote
Mark.
in, hey Mark, wrote in and recommended a podcast episode that I listened to by Greg McGowan, who actually wrote a book called Essentialism. It is top of my list to read for 2025. And I listened to it. It was an awesome interview. But one of the things he said is, as you are trying to implement a habit or to achieve a goal, you want to set a minimum and sort of and maximum quantity of the thing. So I'll give you an example. One of my goals forever has been to be consistent about journaling. And typically in the past, I will journal for, a few days. And then I'm like, oh, this takes so much time. Or there's just, just I don't have that like positive momentum going. So what he was saying is, if that is one of your goals, just commit to writing one sentence minimum per day. And maybe your maximum is 5 sentences per day. And that way, one sentence, anybody can do that. Everybody has time for that. But you also cap yourself at 5 sentences, because what happens is if you sit down in one session and do 25 pages in your journal, the next day when you go to sit down, you're going to be like, oh, well, that took an hour. I don't have an hour today. So I love this idea and I've been trying to implement it. So every day I just commit to writing one sentence. And literally some days I've written like 1 or 2 sentences. And then other days I'm like at 5 or 6. But I love this idea of like setting a minimum, maximum. Same thing with exercise, right? Instead of saying I'm going to work out an hour a day, I'm going to work out a minimum of 10 minutes, right? Make it very attainable, reduce that friction so that it's much easier for you to implement and commit to in your life. And I loved that idea of the
Yeah.
minimum maximum.
Yeah, I think that's really, really helpful idea. Especially, I think I can find a way to implement that in finding my fitness again. That's another thing that's a goal of mine the year is rediscovering the fit person I used to be. And that helps me as well because when I think about it in big chunks, like, oh, I'm going to go back to Orange Theory, right? Orange Theory is a 60-minute high intensity workout class. It feels very overwhelming for me. But then if I just say, oh, as long as I do, at least 10 minutes on the Stairmaster today or 10 minutes on a treadmill today, that I think helps to make it feel more digestible than just like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I'm going to go back to OT.
Yeah, exactly. Right. 10 minutes of movement a day, however
Yes.
that looks, right? Some days you're going to
Yes.
be able to go to the Stairmaster. Some days it's just going to be walking around because,
Yep.
that's what you have access to. So, yeah, I thought that was really helpful.
Yeah, I like that. We're both doing the work.
We are. We are doing the work and we love sharing what we're learning with you all. So, hopefully it's helpful. On that note, please give us all the stars, give us a
Yay.
review, let us know what you enjoyed about the episode. We love hearing from you because this is for you. So
Hmm.
we put this on for you all. Otherwise, Atrice and I would just be hanging out chatting, but we wouldn't
Yeah,
have to
and we
record it.
love
So
that.
we love
You
that.
guys don't need to watch it.
Exactly. Exactly. So we will see you back next week for another episode. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. And until next time.
Live richly.